Okay. Welcome, everyone. This is the Greater Brookland Intergenerational Village Volunteer Training. Today, we are going to go over a whole bunch of stuff, but we would like to start by giving you an overview of the village. We'll also cover goals for the training. We'll go over volunteer agreements and expectations that we have for our volunteers. We'll talk about volunteer opportunities and the service request process. Like, how does a member request a volunteer service, and then how do you then pick up that request? Then we're going to kind of dive a little bit deeper into how to be a successful volunteer, how, like, some qualities that you should have and think about when volunteering with our members in their homes on a one-on-one basis. We'll also talk about difficult scenarios that you might come across and how to work with members with physical challenges. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Christina to talk about what villages are.
Yeah, thanks, Nadia. So we just kind of wanted to lay the groundwork with giving you guys some idea of sort of where we fit in a much broader sort of movement. So a village is a local grassroots nonprofit with its mission to support older adults age in place. There's over 300 in the country. And the first village opened in the Beacon Hill neighborhood of Boston in 2002. So it's pretty new in the scheme of things. It serves a specific geographic area, which tends to be pretty small. It's in its nature is grassroots in that way. Some villages charge a membership fee, others don't. Those fees vary greatly as well. And most villages do offer different levels of membership. So depending on the level of services that you may request. Most offer subsidized or reduced rates depending on need. And some villages have staff like ours, which we'll talk about a few slides from now. Others are all volunteer led, all rely heavily on volunteers. And most villages offer social programming, wellness programming, educational opportunities for their members. They all have volunteer services as a component of their offerings, and then referrals to various other agencies or services that are available for folks in the community. And, just again, contextualizing where we fit in this. In the DMV in general, there are over 70 villages. So we are a part of a very large group. And there's an organization called the Washington Area Village Exchange, or WAVE, that's a resource to all of those metro area villages. The DC Villages Collaborative just deals with the villages in DC. And right now there are 13 active villages. So this is definitely growing in our community, and we do work closely with each other to share best practices as best we can. So as far as us specifically, just as all villages are, we're a local grassroots nonprofit. We were founded in January of 2020, which you might recall early 2020 was a tumultuous time. But we're still here. The folks who started the village are still involved, which is lovely. We are the newest of the established 13 villages, and we're the only one in Ward 5 and in Northeast DC. So currently, the neighborhoods that we serve are Brookland, Brentwood, Langdon, Woodridge, and University Heights, hence Greater Brookland. And there's some discussions about how or if we might serve some of the other neighborhoods around us. We offer two levels of membership. So full service membership is the members who are able to request volunteer services. And then we have supporting members who are often volunteers or folks who want to engage in the social programming, but don't necessarily want to engage in the one-on-one volunteer services that we offer. Our membership dues are sliding scale, so they range from 0 to 300 for a full service membership. As the other villages do, we offer social, wellness, and educational programming. We coordinate volunteer services, and then we advocate for inclusion of older adults and encourage intergenerational relationships. So meet the staff. These are the folks that work for GBIV in a staff capacity. Nadia is interim executive director. And then we have Kinyofu, who is our community organizer. She lives in the neighborhood. She's been connected for a number of years, and she works on our partnerships and our programs. So you will see both of them at events. I'm staff at the moment as well, but what you will see is on the next slide. I am listed under the board because I was in a board position for the last year. So these are our board members. Again, all live in the general area and serve in some sort of capacity on a committee, and then, of course, do the governance work that a board is responsible for.
Thanks, Christina. That's great background, and I hope you guys have a better sense of how we operate. And like, why are we here? I mean, I think you all know this, but I just want to say it is that like our mission is really to combat social isolation by connecting neighbors across generations. And we really have, like most villages, an eye towards ensuring that seniors can live in their homes as long as possible and be actively engaged in their communities. So that is why we're here, and all the pieces that Christina laid out for you is for that purpose. Okay, so after this training, we hope that you'll be able to understand our expectations of you as a volunteer, know how you can help as a volunteer, you know how to use active listening skills and set appropriate boundaries. Identify red flags you might see when working with members, and understand how to respond in an emergency, and understand how to support members with physical challenges. Okay, so we all introduced ourselves, so we have a pretty good sense of why you're here. And just some other reasons, and what we've heard people say about volunteering with Greater Brookland Village is that they love it because they get to meet neighbors and form new relationships. They get to put their skills to good use, especially for folks that are retired or even not. But I hear that a lot from people who are retired that they love still being engaged and being able to give back using the skills that they've worked their whole career gaining. Also, to stay physically, socially, and mentally active. And of course, volunteering is good for our health. And it's not only good for our health, but increases our sense of purpose and happiness. Okay. So we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about our expectations for volunteers by reviewing our volunteer agreements. And Joan will take it from here.
Okay. Um, so our volunteer agreements are intended to make sure that both the volunteers and our members feel good about their involvement with GBIV. The complete agreements are going to be available in your volunteer manual, which will be available to you, I believe, after this session. But here are some highlights that you will agree to if you become a volunteer, that you will treat members, staff, and fellow volunteers with courtesy, respect, and compassion. Um, the next one is an important one. I will observe, protect, and maintain confidentiality regarding village members. We want to make sure that members reach out for help when they need it without worrying or having their personal issues talked about without their consent. We always keep the identities of our members private. In practice, this means that when you talk about the wonderful volunteering you do, just make sure to not use any identifiers. You can say, I helped someone with a gardening project today, and I really enjoyed talking to them, but do not say, I helped a woman who lives on 15th and Lawrence Street with weeding her garden and found out that she's undergoing cancer treatment, and I hope she'll be okay. In this example, you may be breaking confidentiality by sharing a member's personal health information. The general rule is to keep information vague and nondescript as much as possible. moving forward, I will commit to those activities for which I am qualified and available. Village volunteering is flexible, so if you can't do it, don't sign up for it. It's okay. I will be prompt and reliable when reporting for a volunteer assignment. We do understand that on occasion things come up that may make you late. You might misplace your keys when you're leaving your house, or your dog may take longer than expected to do its business. In these situations, please communicate with the member that you are running late with a simple phone call. If you need to cancel altogether, tell the member and call GBIV as soon as possible to keep us informed of the schedule changes so that we can either find another volunteer or help you reschedule. I understand that all Brookland Village volunteer assignments will be issued by GBIV staff, and I will not accept any personal requests from village members. We uphold this agreement to ensure our volunteers and members maintain healthy boundaries and only perform the service that was agreed upon and for the amount of time that you set aside for the task. Example, if your internet is out and you schedule someone from Verizon to come fix your router, you don't then expect them to also mow your lawn. So if you're helping a member remove their air conditioning units in their windows for the winter, and they then ask you to give them a ride to the bank, you can politely decline by simply saying, "It sounds like you really need to get to the bank. I can't help you right now, but please call the village to put in the request. And if I can't do it, I'm sure they'll find another volunteer to help you." We want you to have a positive experience and keep coming back to volunteer. So that for that reason, maintaining these boundaries is a big part of that. Finally, we ask all volunteers to also uphold certain values. The first value is cultural humility. As a volunteer, you may be asked to work with members who are different from you. We ask that all community members, including volunteers, practice cultural humility. What does that look like? It means approaching others with the goal of listening and understanding, because we will never be sufficiently knowledgeable about cultures aside from our own. It means committing ourselves to approaching each person with an open, non-judgmental mind. And it also means working to identify and resolve better imbalances, being careful not to impose what we think is right or best. Our next value is that all of our members, regardless of their age, health, mobility, or other circumstances, are able to meaningfully contribute. All of our members are valued for what they add to our community, whether that be a laugh, a story, a hug, or a more tangible volunteer service. We recognize that volunteer service is a mutually beneficial interaction. Volunteering is not a one-sided transaction, but empowers and benefits both the member and the volunteer. The last value I want to mention is around self-determination, which basically acknowledges that members are individuals with their own value systems and decision-making processes. While volunteers can provide additional support, we should appreciate that members are independent people capable of making their own decisions. This also means that every person has the right to make bad decisions. We all have our own path, and it's not your responsibility to judge someone's lifestyle or choices. There are some limitations here that we'll discuss later, like if you think a member is putting their health and safety in jeopardy. But overall, while a volunteer might disagree with a member's decisions, we have to understand that a member's decision is ultimately their own to make. Finally, we must agree that another's beliefs and values should never be imposed on members. Do you have any questions about the volunteer agreements? Okay, then I think the next step is going to be talking about the steps to become a volunteer, and what the volunteer opportunities look like and how the volunteer service request process works.
Okay, thank you so much, Joan.
You're welcome.
Okay, here we are. Steps to become a volunteer. So you're well on your way to this process, but I'm going to start from the beginning. Of course, first you have to have an initial interest, and then if you haven't already, the next step is usually to complete an application. So we have a volunteer application on our website. And that's just really so that you can sign off on the agreements that we talked about today, but also so that we have your phone number in the same place and your email address and the categories you're interested in volunteering in are also in that form. Then the third step is to attend a volunteer session, an orientation training, and that's what you're watching right now. After that, we do, if we haven't already, just like to have a really brief phone call with our volunteers. Okay, so it's not necessarily a full 20 minutes. We don't want to take up too much more of your time than we're already asking, but this is just a way for us to answer any questions you might have about volunteering with the village, but also like make sure that our expectations are clear and that your expectations of us are also clear. And if you are interested in joining a volunteer committee, which I'll talk about next, that we plug you in to the right committee. Okay, so after that interview, um, and even after this training, you will be sent a background check. So that is something that we ask all our volunteers to do. We use a company called Sterling Volunteer. It's really simple. We just put in your name and your email address, and they send you an email to put in just your social security number, and your name, and then it runs the criminal background check. If you are interested in becoming a volunteer driver that helps members get to the grocery store, then that would require a little bit more of a driver's background check, motor vehicle background check, I guess is what it's called, and for us to collect your driver's license and your proof of car insurance. And then that's it. You're on our list to be a one-on-one volunteer. You also could become a strategic volunteer, and for that, you do not need a criminal background check. Okay, Jan, hand.
Yes, I have a question. Is there a fee for the background check?
The organization covers the fee. You can choose to cover it, the village does cover it, and I think it's like $19 or $15. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Um, all right, so volunteer opportunities. What does it look like to volunteer for the village? Okay, one way to get involved is by becoming a one-on-one village volunteer. So that's listed on the left side of the screen. This means you would assist members who are typically your neighbors directly to provide practical support. So we currently have about 35 active village volunteers or one-on-one volunteers. But we definitely would like to increase that number over the course of this year. And a couple things in terms of one-on-one volunteering that we really do need is we need some more transportation volunteers and also people who are handy. Like if you know how to install a curtain or a light fixture, like those have been pretty popular requests lately. Okay. But one-on-one volunteers are really, it's such a wonderful experience because you go to the member's house typically and you get to know them. And we'll talk about other ways that differentiate us from a contractor. We're not just there to install the light bulb or whatever it is and then go. It's really about also building that relationship. Okay. And then the other way to volunteer is by becoming a strategic volunteer. And strategic volunteers, the best way to do that is by joining one of our committees. So we have a member and volunteer committee, and what they do is they support outreach for volunteers. So outreach events that like the one Jan saw at the farmers market. They check in with full members through friendly phone calls or friendly visits at their homes. They help with this process of training and having that one-on-one phone call with new volunteers. There's also the program committee. The program committee is such a fun committee because they help organize all the social, wellness, and educational programs that the village hosts every month. Programs include things like game group, knitting club. We have a local authors book club that they organize, gentle yoga, hand dancing, all sorts of things, front porch Fridays and member potlucks. So that's a great way if you like organizing events to get involved. And we have the development committee, which is very important. They support our fundraising activities, such as the fundraiser that we have coming up September 30th at Right Proper Brewery. We welcome you all to come to that. It's going to be a great fun night. Oh, Jan has the flyer. Yeah, we have a live band and there's a raffle with amazing prizes. And you don't have to be at the event to win the prizes, but please check it out. It's on our website. And then they also support the development committee supports the end of year campaign and other like donor cultivation events. Okay, then we would love to start an outreach and communications committee. We don't have one yet, but we could really use the help there. We have some volunteers who are supporting that. That's like creating the Brookland Buzz, which is our biweekly e-newsletter. So if you haven't gotten that yet, we would love to make sure you're on the list and you're staying informed with all the things that we're doing. Um, okay, so volunteers typically start on the committee level before joining the board. But if for some reason you are really eager to join the board and have previous board experience, you can let us know about that too. So you can decide which of these opportunities are right for you. Many of our volunteers like both. They're both interested in one-on-one volunteering. That's where many people's hearts lay. But then some also would like to help on a strategic level. Okay. Okay, so what is the process that a member goes through to request a service and then how do you find out? So okay, first of all, the member makes a request, right? And they can do that by calling GBIV, calling us, or emailing info@brooklandvillage.org, and they will explain what they need help with. Okay, so then once we get all the details from them about their timeline and the task at hand, then we send an email. So it's pretty basic. We send an email to all of our volunteers that will say village volunteer request in the subject line. And it will tell you just like a couple words in the subject line about what the task is. And then if there's a date that it needs to happen or if it's flexible. And in that email, we'll describe a little bit more about the task, but we won't give any identifying information about the member. You'll just know that it is in our village footprint, so it's not going to be far. Okay. So all the volunteers get that email. And then if you can do it, you confirm by just replying to that email. Okay. And then we will match you with the member in an email. Okay, so that you can coordinate your schedule and any other details that need to happen. So we ask the volunteer to call the member and to introduce themselves and confirm the logistics of where and when you're going to meet. And then again to call like 24 hours before just to make sure everyone remembers. Okay. And then you complete the volunteer request. Just again, make sure that if you're running late, you give the member a call and that you stick to the task that you signed up for. Okay. And then finally, after the task is complete, we appreciate if you submit a quick form that you'll be emailed, and that just like helps us keep track of the service, how it went, and how many hours of your time it spent. So that is something that we track for reporting purposes to our funders, is how many hours of volunteer services we're connecting members with. Okay, and that form also you can share any concerns that you might have, something that you saw at the member's house, perhaps that makes you concerned about like really their health and well-being, so that staff can follow up. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about what I just discussed?
Nadia, I have a question.
Sure.
Um, so when the members submit a request, can they request multiple tasks, or do you all have them stick to like one main thing?
Yeah, so if that happens, we'll prioritize them with the member and send out one at a time, unless they're all related, really closely.
I have a question. If we wanted to help with an event that was going on, how do we, I guess, volunteer for that?
So once you're on our volunteer list, we will also send out like emails when we have events too that we need volunteer support at. So you will receive those requests. It's not a member request, but that is a need that we have. For
Makes
example, like
sense.
with the fundraiser coming up on the 30th, we're about to send an email to all the volunteers saying like, can anyone help with food, preparation or check-in table? Mhm. Okay. Now we're going to talk about communication and boundary setting strategies we can use to build healthy relationships when volunteering. These also apply to relationships with other people in our lives. So lots of these trainings, just so you know, and tools were developed by licensed clinical social workers at Capitol Hill Village and with Iona. Okay. So there are two main communication strategies we want to encourage volunteers to use with members. A volunteer is not a contractor. Every time we engage in a volunteer service with a member, we're building relationship. The building relationship piece is just as important as completing the task. So we encourage you to talk to the member and get to know them while you're completing the service request. We recommend you use the following communication strategies when volunteering with our members. First, active listening. You may be familiar with this term. The active listening means using verbal and nonverbal cues to show that you're listening. So verbal cues include things like mm-hmm, uh-huh, yes. And nonverbal cues include like leaning slightly towards the speaker, head nodding, making eye contact, etc. Another is ask open-ended questions. So these give people permission to say more about what they are thinking and feeling. So instead of asking yes or no questions like, are you having difficulty navigating public transit? You can ask, how has your experience been with public transportation lately? Other examples include, what else can you tell me about? And can you tell me more about? And then paraphrasing and reflecting. Paraphrasing is when the listener repeats the person's statement in their own words to ensure that the message is understood. So, for example, if the member says, I'm worried about all the work that is needed to maintain my house. I want to stay here, but I don't feel like I can keep up with it all. You can paraphrase that to make sure that they know you're listening by saying, what I hear you saying is that maintaining your independence and remaining at home is really important to you, yet it's challenging. Is that correct? And then refrain from jumping into advice giving mode. I know this is hard. It can be really hard for me, but because we all want to be helpful, but it's more important that you're listening and helping them come to their own conclusions. Okay. The second communication strategy is to encourage reminiscing, which is particularly helpful in working with older adults. Reminiscence is a way of reliving things that have happened in the past that are personally significant. It is often fun and even therapeutic and can help the storyteller reinforce their sense of identity and maintain their self-esteem. Many people find that trips down memory lane improve their sense of self and help them to connect their past with their present. So, questions that you could ask when volunteering are: how long have you lived in the neighborhood? What was your childhood like? What was your first job? What is one of your most exciting memories? So, the most important part is just to be curious about the member and see where the conversation takes you. A conversation is like walking down a hallway with many doors. Each room is the opportunity to explore a different part of someone's life. Okay. So, the last key suggestion we have for building healthy relationships with our members is around setting healthy boundaries. So, volunteers are typically very caring people, and we want to make sure you're not overextending yourself. So, creating and maintaining healthy boundaries with a member is key to being a successful volunteer because boundaries create security within the relationship, and you can be compassionate and make sure that you're setting boundaries to stay within your assignment. So, how to do this? You can determine how much time you are open to offering. So, when talking to a member, use clear and simple communication. For example, hi, Kathy, this is Nadia. I'll be coming today at 10, but I have to leave by 11:30 because I have another engagement. So be consistent and stick to the plan. If a member asks you to do a task that is different from your assignment that day, don't be afraid to say no. Remind them that what you are here to do. If a member is upset when you say you can't help with the additional request, they may respond emotionally, they may be a little passive aggressive. If you feel guilty or responsible, this is a reaction to your boundaries being crossed. So you can respond with clear, respectful, and empathetic language. Kathy, I'm sorry that you're upset. This must be really frustrating for you. We agreed that I would help you with your computer today, and that's all I can do. Do you want my help submitting another request to the village? You can consult us at GBIV if you aren't sure if the request falls within the boundaries of your volunteer assignment. Okay. Other ways to know that your boundaries are being crossed: you lose objectivity. You feel like it's your responsibility to fix something for the member. You feel annoyed about your visit or drained after volunteering, or you're not comfortable saying no. So we need to maintain our boundaries so we don't feel guilty when volunteering with the village. If at any point you're struggling to create or maintain healthy boundaries, you can talk to us about that. And these things typically don't happen, but every once in a while, it has come up. Right? Does anyone have any questions about those things? Okay. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about potential challenging situations that may arise when volunteering. Again, have rarely to never happened, but we feel like you should know. Okay, I'll pass it to Joan. Joan.
Well, okay, and to repeat what Nadia said, as we go through this section, please remember that these scenarios are unlikely and that you are never alone. We're here for you. Um, all full service members receive a house visit from village staff and the member and volunteer committee as part of their onboarding process. A volunteer is never the first one to visit a member's home. A village volunteer may be the first person to notice a member's unusual behavior. These changes may indicate serious underlying problems. significant personality changes are not a normal part of aging, and could be indicative of a problem. Amongst older adults, anger, paranoia, agitation could indicate cognitive decline or other emotional, mental, or physical ailments. The following is a partial list of red flags you might encounter when volunteering. These are some of the changes in behavior that may indicate members are in need of additional help. Contact GBIV if you observe any of the following: changes in mood, confusion or disorientation, alcohol or drug abuse, changes in physical health, neglect of personal hygiene or an unhygienic living situation, and paranoia. And what to do? Contact GBIV immediately. And you will report it on a form that we have. Now we're going to talk about two difficult scenarios that you will also most likely never encounter while working with members. But on the off chance that you do, we want to make sure you're prepared. Here are some guidelines for what to do if you're with a member and they have an accident. In this event, we want to make sure that we remain calm. If the member is unconscious or incapacitated, do not try to move them except in a hazardous situation, such as a fire. Call 911 immediately for emergency assistance, and call GBIV as soon as possible to report the incident and ask for support. The second difficult scenario is if a member doesn't answer the door when they are expecting you. In this situation, you also have to remain calm and follow the following steps. Call the member on the phone number you were provided. Check the surrounding area, look in the windows and try the door, but do not go inside. If you see the member through the window lying on the ground and not responsive to knocks, call 911 immediately. It's much better to be safe than sorry. False alarms are always preferred to the alternative. Call GBIV office directly afterwards for assistance and/or to report the incident. As a volunteer, it is not your responsibility to investigate any further. GBIV staff will assist by trying to contact the member or their emergency contacts. Remember, members like all of us may have something come up and forget to let us know, so please do not take a no-show personally. And now a disclaimer: in the unlikely event that you experience an accident related to volunteering, we want to make sure to share liability-related information as it relates to volunteers. Volunteers are protected under Good Samaritan laws, but these laws do not generally cover costs of legal fees. In order to make sure you are protected while volunteering, GBIV maintains a liability insurance policy that protects volunteers against civil claims made by members or third parties. There are limits to this coverage. The insurance will not cover the volunteer if they commit a crime, for example. Also, we do expect that volunteers rely on their own health insurance and car insurance. Since you are not employees of GBIV, you are not covered by workers' compensation insurance, so you must rely on your own health insurance if you're injured while volunteering for the village. Those of you who volunteer to drive, let's say you're delivering groceries for someone, you must rely on your own car insurance policy to cover personal injuries or property damage.
Thanks, Joan.
You're welcome.
So this next part of our presentation is about how to support members with physical challenges, and we'll get into some specifics. So next slide, please. So, folks with mobility related challenges, I'm just going to kind of go through our sort of best practices here. And again, this might be something, an area that you have a lot of experience in or less. So, we just think it's important to review some of these best practices. Um, so, the first one is to always ask a member to tell you how to assist them. Once again, we're going back to not assuming that you know what's best for that person. Ensure that assistive devices like canes or crutches, walkers are within easy reach of the member. If there is an alternative to climbing up and down stairs, use it. Just in general, if we can use an elevator, let's do it. As far as using the cane and walker, best practice is to ensure that members don't try to use a walker to pull themselves up. It can lead to falls. They're not made for that, but it is really helpful to offer to carry items for the member. Their coat, maybe a purse, things like that. Those things can make it harder to use a walker or a cane. So that is a good practice. If the member uses a wheelchair, you can check in with a member about the features of the wheelchair and as well as their comfort level using the wheelchair on their own. Many people will not need assistance using their own wheelchair, but you can ask. If the member does not need you to push the wheelchair, do not. And remember to engage the wheelchair locks before a member gets in or out of the chair so we don't have a runaway wheelchair situation. And then use the tipping levers um, at the bottom of the chair, like when you need to, just to keep it more stable for folks. And then again, it's just best practice to not necessarily lean on a wheelchair. It's part of their personal space. It can also kind of create some instability. And then going back to sort of Nadia's point about active listening, best practice would be if a person is, if you're going to talk with a person for more than a couple minutes, consider sitting down or kneeling so that you can be at their same level. All right, hearing related challenges. Um, so be sure that you have the hearing impaired individual's attention before speaking. So this is, again, best practice, not speaking from a different room. Make sure that they know that you're talking to them. You can politely ask the individual if there's something you can do that will help them hear and understand you better. You can face the person you're speaking to, be on the same level. Keep your hands away from your face. I'm terrible at that, but while speaking and use body language and hand gestures. So some people with hearing impairments may, rely on those other signs while you're communicating. Speak slowly, clearly, and louder than you usually do, and then allow the person some time to process and respond to what you said. Avoid chewing gum or covering your mouth when talking. Many people with hearing impairments will have an ear that they hear better out of, so try to direct your voice towards that ear. And try to minimize background noise. So if there is a TV on, if somebody's watching a video on their phone, that makes it harder for folks to hear. So muting any background noise before you try to have a conversation can be really helpful. And then just in general, don't assume a person can hear you just because they're wearing a hearing aid. So make sure that you're getting confirmation from the person with head nods or eye contact that they can hear you and that they understand that what you're saying. Okay, vision related challenges. Um, again, lots of similar themes here, but don't be afraid to ask the member about what they're able to perceive and distinguish. Understanding limitations and capabilities is really helpful. Ask the member what help they might require. Pay attention to the light sources in the space. Maybe turn on an extra light can be helpful. Always make your presence known and identify yourself and others. Um, avoid the temptation to raise your voice. Vision related challenges are not always coinciding with hearing related challenges. Speak directly to the member that you're with in your normal manner. And then when walking or moving about the world, describe where you're going and any changes in the ground level. So just, alerting them to, as we all know, have many bumps in the sidewalk around. So letting them know when something like that is coming up can be really helpful. and never pull or grab at someone in order to guide them or gain their attention. All right, Nadia, you're up.
Can I ask a quick question about that? If someone does have a physical challenge, will it be noted in the request so that you're aware of the situation before you go into it?
Great question. Yes.
Okay, great.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you, Christina. Hopefully now you all feel more prepared and confident to support members with mobility, hearing, and visual challenges. And yes, we will notify you before matching you with the member if that is the case. And before we finish today, since we're about to wrap up, we just have one note on intergenerational villages because we are one. So unlike the other villages in DC, we are intergenerational. This means that we are intentionally trying to bring different age groups together for social activities, but it also means that we believe people of all ages can ask for help, and we want to normalize asking for help. So sometimes a younger person might need help from an older person. It's not just one-sided. Okay. Okay. Before we talk about next steps, I will end the recording and we'll talk about next steps, and we will also talk about or answer any questions you might have. But thank you so much for being here.